Welcome to the Talking Shh podcast. That's right. We'll be talking about music, albums, live shows, bands we love, bands not so much. Again, we're talking shh. Join me, Scott Nokon, and Stephen James. Hey guys, we are back. This is Scott. That's Stephen. I think Stephen's below, right?
I'm up here, but
You're up there, yeah.
Somewhere.
So we figured we do a little something different today. Just no background and completely coincidental. We're wearing the same T-shirt, and we did not even plan it. So again, a little promotion for KP, Mike, and Krusty on drums.
Homage.
Homage to Devil Hound. So check out Devil Hound on Instagram, all streaming everywhere. Just type it in. You can see it. Devil Hound, great music.
And Scott usually opens the show with playing 2 tracks from Devil Hound on 99 WNRR on Tuesdays at what time, Scott?
6 Central.
6 Central. Yeah. 2 hours behind us or ahead of us.
7 East, 6 Central, 4 on the West.
There we go.
3
That's why you're a professional DJ.
Somewhere else. Well, yeah, we'll see about that. That's for another show. So, we want to continue. We want to continue talking about Ozzy. It's been about a month since the Back to the Beginning show when this will come out. A couple weeks since his passing. And again, we were already kind of doing a celebration anyway, right, Stephen, beforehand. And then it obviously just means so much more. And again, what's the great thing about music is it will live on. So be it in vinyl, on a cassette. Maybe cassettes don't live on forever, right? But certainly there is plenty of options, streaming, what have you, to be able to get Ozzy as as long as you can. Also, I thought it was pretty cool right after the his passing, and I'll just come up with a different word. MTV, which I didn't even realize played videos. They were doing a couple days in a row of all Ozzy, so that was kind of fun. It was like MTV Classic, so it was kind of fun just to sit back and just let that run. And then certainly we've checked out all kinds of content on YouTube or anywhere else, or the YouTube, and like I said, in the past couple of weeks. All that being said, is the response to the first Ozzy show we did, and we're going to probably do 3 total, was great. A lot of viewers, new subscribers, which again, I don't have the little logo here, but when this comes up, subscribe below. There, I can say it. Hit like, leave a comment. All that stuff helps with the algorithm. We've been doing this now for a little over a year. I think it's working, right, Stephen? It's slow and steady wins the race. So we're going to continue.
And we're still being promoted on some of the YouTube channels that I'm a subscription to, particularly Fantastique Publishing. Sarah, if you're hearing this, I'm giving you a shout out for giving us a shout out, because she always promotes us and tells everybody how much she loves and watches and listens. Even if she's not watching, she listens to every single one of them, which is
that's awesome.
So cool. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. And OnlyFans, are you still on OnlyFans, Steve?
I wouldn't even.
Sorry, I wasn't going to talk about that.
I don't want to do OnlyFans.
Yeah. Somebody would, right? So for this episode, like I said, we're going to do a couple of these. We're going to kind of kick off and go into talking about, and we've said this many times, and this may be of zero interest to any of you, but I'll still say it. It's of interest to us, Stephen. Again, just like we're wearing the same T-shirt, not even playing, we like the same type of music. But even when it gets down to liking the same songs or liking the same Ozzy record, and my overall from Ozzy, I'm more of an Ozzy solo fan than Sabbath fan. So I've gone back and revisited, and also was reminded of some records to kind of avoid, but not to talk
right.
There's some stinkers in the Sabbath era for sure, and probably in the Ozzy solo era for sure. However, my favorite Ozzy record is Diary of a Madman. I was just listening to it. I was running back from the store just before this, and just love every part of it. I just love how it sounds. I remember right when it came out in '81, it just had such a major impact on me, and just music, and with Randy Rhoads. And then, just a year prior, went back to Blizzard of Ozz. So we're going to run through all those, Stephen, for sure. But Yeah,
It'd be
that
interesting
always stood out to me.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to dive in as to why Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake were booted off the original recording and had somebody else fill in. So that's, yeah, of course, probably. I think I all had to do with Sharon, unfortunately, but I still don't know the truth to that story. But I do know that when you hear that album, that's original two guys that made that music with Randy, and obviously following that was Rudy Sarzo on bass, and my all-time drum hero. And I'm going to have a total brain fart right now because I just watched him. Yeah, but what's the story behind that? I want to get to that, so maybe that'll be part 3.
Yeah, I think so. That there's a lot out there, and for this, I'm with you 100%. That while this is highlighting Ozzy, there's a backstory or 2 or 10 on all of this. It even gets into Ultimate Sin, right? And where Jakey Lee isn't even cited for, I think, for anything. Pretty much just became, and I don't have all the liner notes right in front of me, but essentially, yeah, there were songs that were re-recorded. There were credits that maybe weren't applied appropriately.
And sorry, those people that are screaming at me right now, Tommy Aldridge, I apologize.
Tommy Aldridge, yeah. No, I didn't remember Tommy. I said Aldridge, and I couldn't remember. Yeah.
Also played with Whitesnake and several other bands. But Tommy's one of the reasons why I play double bass drum to this day. I don't have 2 drums anymore, but I still play double bass.
Yeah. No, for sure. In that, we're going to kind of walk through Ozzy's solo career. Up until just a couple years ago, really, T22 was patient number 9. So we're going to hit on those, Stephen. Like I said, we're going to go into a second episode on this as well. But we'll see where the next few minutes take us. So let me just kind of kick off with, he was fired, right? He was fired from Sabbath. They were a mess. There's been a lot of footage out, none of it new, but kind of revisiting and Ozzy stated that if he didn't get kicked out of Sabbath, he probably would have died. They were all kind of headed towards they were in a bad place for a while, but they were just headed, just with excess of drugs and alcohol and being on the road, really not living a healthy life. All of it culminated, with Ozzy being removed from the band. In that, obviously, but in that, it shaped a career that probably no one would have expected could have happened. And going into it just, not too long later from his, probably lowest point to kind of working his way back up. So in that, I'm going to break these down to a couple kind of segments if I can, Stephen, and feel free just to kind of jump in. So as he leaves Sabbath, kind of wondering what's going on, I'm not going to stick to on September 15th. I'm not going that deep. But in 80, that's when Blizzard of Ozz came out. Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, everybody knows those songs. Crazy Train is played probably, if not in every football game, multiple times, probably almost every sporting event. Yeah. And even watching the Little League World Series, all the regional games, there was, let's say, from Pennsylvania, let's just say that, maybe Delaware, flipped it past ESPN, and there was a kid who was like 11, 12 years old. His walk-up song was Crazy Train. Right. And even the commentators were mentioning, he goes, well, that's pretty cool and timely for sure. But anyway, his impact has gone, across many, many generations. But it all started back in 1980 from a solo career with Blizzard of Ozz. That's where we were introduced to Randy Rhoads, right?
And I mean, I was listening to a really interesting recent interview. Michael Anthony from Van Halen does, he was doing an interview. There's a podcast out, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was Michael Anthony was interviewing Tommy Aldridge, and Tommy was talking highly about how Randy was just this virtuoso. Nobody had heard of him before they became, he was, and true trooper is like, I'm not going to give dirt out on any of the things that went on. I mean, he's such a classy guy, Tommy Aldridge, but how Randy shaped those albums and wrote those songs with Ozzy. And he said, what you see, and I saw also with Zakk Wylde, is that what you see of video of Randy is what they all have too. There's not much of it.
Yeah, true.
And they all are like, whatever they have of it, they all are just cherished. Too tragic of a story. But what Tommy had said was, the guy that was driving the tour bus was the guy that was piloting the plane.
Yeah.
And he said he had been driving all night, and he shouldn't have been being a pilot. They had asked Tommy if he wanted to go on that flight, and Tommy's like, no, I haven't slept all night. It's a road trip. And he vividly tells the story of the bus getting hit and walking out and being in shock and seeing like this house on fire and like going, what's going on? And then he's like, I finally realized after being in shock that Randy was on that plane. So, didn't know that this was going to go that route, but kind of paraphrasing the story of a story that was told by Tommy Aldridge. So
yeah, absolutely.
It was very, very disheartening to hear. And like, I didn't know that until like literally last week I heard the story. So
no, for sure. Yeah. And there's been, like I said, so much footage coming out lately, right? Of just old interviews, some stories that maybe we've heard pieces like that, getting into a little bit more detail. But yeah, there, as most of you guys know that follow Ozzy and metal, and maybe some of you that don't and are tuning in, thank you. But yeah, Randy Rhoads, albeit very brief in Ozzy, he was in Quiet Riot, Rudy Sarzo as well, and then they not as a package deal, but kind of moved over. But there was something about Ozzy and just being able to get, and it wasn't just him, for sure, but being able to get these guitarists. And we'll talk about, some of those guys, obviously, as we get through these
records.
But, yeah. But if, we always play this, what would happen if Randy Rhoads wouldn't have passed away in that accident? He may have, like, some stories, he may have just stopped playing. Like he would have gone on and just wanted to be a teacher. He was very, he was like classically trained, and he was very quiet and kind of a shy guy anyway. And there was just this power and this skill beyond so many, even to this day, that just came out of his fingertips that produced those sounds. And you go through all the records, and there was still opportunity where, probably at the time it wasn't, hey, let's highlight Randy Rhoads, but talent is going to bleed through no matter what. So be it with D or anything else, it kind of just shows, how special he really was.
And she had a teaching place, D Rhoads. The guitar player was one of my bands, actually was a teacher there for a minute, which I love that they carried that, his legacy out and said, hey, well, we're going to bring all these guitar players in to teach people how to play these songs or just be you. Yeah, that was pretty cool thing. I don't know if it's still open to this day, but back in past, she had that got going for a while.
No, definitely. So with that, the first part, kind of segment one, Blizzard of Ozz in 80, Diary of a Madman in 81, Bark of the Moon. And this is when, Stephen, I love this, and it doesn't really happen anymore. There's probably a number of reasons why. And sometimes bands couldn't produce quality year after year, but 80 Blizzard of Ozz, 81 Diary of a Madman, and then World Tours, then 83. Now, in that, obviously, with the tragic loss of Randy Rhoads, and then the Speak of the Devil Behind You, that came out, and that had Brad Gillis playing, who had a decision to make. And I do think he made the right decision, because you have to stick to your guns. He had a chance to leave Night Ranger and join Ozzy, and Night Ranger was just about to break, and he goes, no, I'm going to pass on it. Jakey Lee comes along at Bark of the Moon, and at that point, that's really when I remember the Bark of the Moon video being played all the time, and it was cool, right? Is it kind of cheesy video now?
It's totally sappy, but still, it's a great song.
But yeah, the song was great. That introduced all of us to Jakey Lee. That was pretty awesome. And at that point, Ozzy was really developing beyond just, the former singer of Sabbath, as being this visual icon. from, like I said, with MTV really kind of running full force, jumped a couple, talk about doing records year after year after year. Now, Bark of the Moon was a huge tour. Now, Ultimate Sin, which is very impactful in a number of ways, that comes out in '86. Shot in the Dark was a huge hit off that record. Great video. That allowed Ozzy to pretty much highlight and showcase Metallica on a national stage. That gave them a leg up.
Oh yeah,
going forward with, here's his band, and Ozzy's always been known for that. And we've discussed before, was it Sharon? Was it other members of management? Was it agents? But no matter what, I think Ozzy gets credit for always kind of putting a hand down and lifting those other bands up the ladder.
And they all, to this day,
Crew, my other side here. Wait, what side am I on? There we go.
Real quick, let's just to fall back to Speak of the Devil, which you can't buy here. It doesn't. You have to buy either overseas or whatever. I think Sharon pulled it. I'll have to look into why, but it was released in response to a contractual obligation to deliver a live album with the intention of also generating royalties for Osbourne and other songwriters from the Black Sabbath catalog. The album was released around the same time as Black Sabbath's live album, Live Evil, creating a competitive atmosphere between the two. And I also had heard that Ozzy didn't even want to do this, but he did. And when you listen to it, and I would highly recommend to listen with different musicians that killed it. Actually, one of my favorite live Ozzy records ever. I mean, it just, Tommy Aldridge on drums, of course, Rudy Sarzo on bass, and Brad Gillis, he, for being an unknown at that time, killed on that.
Oh, absolutely. Oh yeah, yeah, he was great and is still great. They're still playing today.
Night Ranger. And they did. I did see a clip that Night Ranger, the day that he had passed, did a segment of Crazy Train. I think it was Crazy Train. But it's still to this day, and my wife and I were just talking about how people are still. This is like still a high level conversation about Ozzy passing.
Oh yeah,
Neil Peart died of Rush. Yeah, it was tragic for me because he's really the reason why I started playing drums. But Ozzy, to this day, it just is such a significant loss to what he had created. Was it with Sharon? Sure, but the guy right here, that voice, that man, and when you watch all of his shows, and at the very end, he always says, "God bless you all. I love you all."
Yeah,
that just sends chills down my spine.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No matter who was around him, they still weren't his voice. They still weren't his personality, right? He needed to be kind of directed and prompted in certain areas, but it was still what he had. So 100%, with Ultimate Sin in '86, No Rest for the Wicked. And so this is Zakk Wylde, right? Jakey Lee wasn't around for more than one record. And he went on to, I like to say fame. I don't know about fortune with Badlands, because there's a whole other history there, which we'll talk about. Just offshoots of Ozzy members, I think, could be a fun and interesting topic in the future, Stephen, to kind of trace the lineage, right? You talk about
Randy Castillo.
Yeah, Randy Castillo, Tommy Aldridge, what he with Whitesnake, and many other bands that he's played with. I think it'd be nice to kind of follow that family tree. That's great. For another episode. But with that, Zakk Wylde joined for No Rest for the Wicked. Wow,
21-year-old.
No Rest for the Wicked. Yeah, just a kid. And you look at him now, and he's just like, he'll break you in two, but he's still he's got that Jersey accent, right? He's just, and there was so much reflection on Ozzy, and he was fired from Ozzy's band.
I know.
And he still to this day, and certainly with before everything that happened with Ozzy, they were still like the closest of friends. I probably should look that up. I don't know the history behind what
they used to drink together heavily in the beginning.
Well, yeah. And I think not to say that he was the bad influence, because I'm sure Ozzy did that, with the power of 10 men, if not more. But he called him Zachy all the time, but something happened, right? But then he came back, and obviously I think they all ended on a positive note for sure for many years. But the after No More Tears, which is that the biggest record? I know, Stephen, you like the little factoids, which we'll roll out, if not in this episode, the next one for sure. We got a couple minutes to go here. When you kind of get into, let's call it the peak years, this is 91 to 97, No More Tears, Mama, I'm Coming Home, huge hit. No More Tears. Love that song. I still think that's that bass line, that intro is one of the best intros of any song ever in any musical genre, period.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Road to Nowhere, really kind of deep. I know that when we did a show a couple weeks ago on the radio show, took some request, and that was one that popped up a number of times. Road to Nowhere, just kind of a mellow, laid back song, but very fitting. In that, multi-platinum success, Grammy nominations off there. This is when they get into Osmosis in '95. Perry Mason was a huge hit. I didn't really know what I thought about that, but I've obviously in the 30 years since it's been out, that's just a really good tour. And then in '96, it kind of took metal and hard rock and the live show, certainly from a festival standpoint, into a whole other realm with the launch of Ozzfest, which again, Sharon, management, agents, but it's Ozzy's name on it. And that gave us, again, highlighting other bands that are now huge in their own right, Slipknot, System of a Down, and many, many, many others. Yeah. Segment 4 is kind of the MTV era. Down to Earth in 2001. I don't really know that record too much. I kind of drifted away after.
I was the same way. There was like a gap.
Yeah. Black, during that same time, while not a record, certainly from a pop culture standpoint, the Osbournes was huge.
3 years.
Only on the air 3 years, right? But mighty 3 years. And again, the family may not have existed if they did a fourth or fifth, because I think they were as much as, you get, I think just like most people, I love a good reality show, and it's now a whole other story. But this predates Kardashians. This predates.
They were the original.
Real World. This predates
They started
Housewives, all that. Which there's such a huge element
Housewives
of
are all
scripted. Yeah, right. So, but in that, the
funny
that started, a whole other genre just from an animal.
Jersey Shore.
Steven, behind you, be careful. There's an animal coming up.
Yeah, I know they're up. They fucking meander around.
Black Rain in 2007, Scream 2010. At that point, the songs are still good. It's still Ozzy. There was a lot of videos, like I said earlier on the top of the show, that I saw on when they did kind of the retrospective on MTV in kind of the final acts, which at the time didn't know about it, but certainly just from an age standpoint, as Ozzy was getting up there. And his last record came out in 2022. Let's see, 76. He was, 73, probably 72 when that started. Ordinary Man in 2020 with Elton John, Post Malone, Slash, and then Patient Number 9 in 2022 with Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Tony Iommi. That won the Grammy for Best Metal Performance.
So awesome.
Degradation Rules was the track. Ordinary Man. Go back and watch that video. It's kind of eerie how it ties together. It's not eerie in that it ties together all of his albums, but when you look back at it now and the way it's filmed and Ozzy sitting there watching it, it's like there couldn't have been a better visual representation of his entire history. If anything, that would fit perfectly as bringing it all together.
What I'd like to do on our next episode with Ozzy is talk about all the former members in just a brief. I'm not going to talk widely about them, but you just to imagine how many members played with Ozzy, which is just a phenomenal list. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we're gonna definitely do that. The breakdown also of record sales per will go into overall Ozzy's solo career, 50 million plus. Dozens of videos, millions of fans,
and even now his record sales have spiked after he passed. I mean, and downloading and so forth. You and I have, and you talk more about it, about buying bands merch, because our record sales were part of what you and I grew up with back working at Music Plus, and CDs and cassettes, and that doesn't really exist anymore. But the spike of downloading Ozzy music is surpassed any musician that has passed recently.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Other than David Bowie.
For sure. Yeah. And I've had trouble, and we'll end on this, and we're going to do another episode, Stephen, talking about, more of Ozzy, but it's been hard to even find stuff online
Yeah.
One, because things are being completely like priced out of the market, and it's like, here's $1,000 for this. Thanks again for tuning in to the show. We'll be back every week with a brand new episode. Make sure you check us out on Instagram at Talking Show, and also listen on Spotify or wherever you can stream a podcast. See ya.